Producer Price Indexes, May 2020. The Producer Price Index for final demand rose 0.4% in May, seasonally adjusted, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today. This increase followed declines of 1.3% in April and 0.2% in March. See Table A. On an unadjusted basis, the final demand index decreased 0.8% for the 12 months ended in May. In May, the advance in the final demand index is attributable to prices for final demand goods, which climbed 1.6%. In contrast, the index for final demand services fell 0.2%. Prices for final demand less foods, energy, and trade services edged up 0.1% in May, following 3 consecutive declines. For the 12 months ended in May, the index for final demand less foods, energy, and trade services moved down 0.4%, the largest 12-month decrease since the index began in August 2013. Final demand goods, the index for final demand goods rose 1.6% in May, the largest increase since the index began in November 2009. Nearly two-thirds of the advance can be traced to prices for final demand foods, which increased 6.0%. The index for final demand energy climbed 4.5%, while prices for goods less foods and energy were unchanged. Product detail: two-thirds of the May increase in the index for final demand goods is attributable to a 40.4% jump in meat prices. The indexes for gasoline, processed young chickens, light motor trucks, liquefied petroleum gas, and carbon steel scrap also moved higher. Conversely, prices for chicken eggs fell 41.2%. The indexes for diesel fuel and for plastic resins and materials also decreased. See Table 4. Final demand services, the index for final demand services fell 0.2% in May, the same as in April. The May decrease can be attributed to margins for final demand trade services, which declined 0.8%. Trade indexes measure changes in margins received by wholesalers and retailers. In contrast, prices for final demand transportation and warehousing services advanced 1.5%. The index for final demand services less trade, transportation, and warehousing was unchanged. Product detail: leading the May decline in the index for final demand services, margins for fuels and lubricants retailing dropped 13.1%. The indexes for loan services, partial, securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services, truck transportation of freight, machinery and vehicle wholesaling, and automobile parts retailing also moved lower. Conversely, prices for transportation of passengers, partial, rose 12.2%. The indexes for dental care and apparel, jewelry, footwear, and accessories retailing also increased. Intermediate demand by commodity type. Within intermediate demand in May, prices for processed goods rose 0.1%, the index for unprocessed goods increased 8.9%, and prices for services fell 0.4%. See Tables B and C. Processed goods for intermediate demand, the index for processed goods for intermediate demand moved up 0.1% in May after 5 consecutive declines. Leading the increase, prices for processed foods and feeds climbed 6.4%. The index for processed energy goods rose 0.1%. In contrast, prices for processed materials less foods and energy decreased 0.6%. For the 12 months ended in May, the index for processed goods for intermediate demand dropped 6.8%. Product detail: the index for processed young chickens rose 14.4%. Prices for meats, gasoline, lubricating oil-based stocks, and softwood lumber, not edge-worked, also advanced. Conversely, the index for basic organic chemicals declined 5.2%. Prices for diesel fuel, steel mill products, and natural cheese, except cottage cheese, also fell. Unprocessed goods for intermediate demand, the index for unprocessed goods for intermediate demand rose 8.9% in May, the largest advance since a 9.0% increase in February 2007. 3/4 of the broad-based increase in May can be traced to a 26.5% jump in prices for unprocessed energy materials. The indexes for unprocessed foodstuffs and feedstuffs and for unprocessed non-food materials less energy moved up 4.5% and 0.6%, respectively. For the 12 months ended in May, prices for unprocessed goods for intermediate demand dropped 19.4%. Product detail: over one-third of the May increase in the index for unprocessed goods for intermediate demand can be traced to a 36.5% jump in prices for natural gas. The indexes for crude petroleum, slaughter chickens, slaughter barrows and gilts, slaughter steers and heifers, and carbon steel scrap also rose. In contrast, the index for raw milk dropped 22.4%. Prices for corn and aluminum-based scrap also fell. Services for intermediate demand: the index for services for intermediate demand moved down 0.4% in May, the fourth consecutive decline. The May decrease is attributable to prices for services less trade, transportation, and warehousing for intermediate demand, which fell 0.9%. Conversely, the index for trade services for intermediate demand increased 0.6%, and prices for transportation and warehousing services for intermediate demand moved up 0.5%. For the 12 months ended in May, prices for services for intermediate demand decreased 1.6%, the largest 12-month decline since the index began in November 2009. Product detail: 70% of the May decrease in prices for services for intermediate demand can be traced to a 10.0% decline in the index for securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services. The indexes for non-residential real estate rents, loan services, partial, broadcast and network television advertising time sales, truck transportation of freight, and fuels and lubricants retailing also declined. In contrast, margins for machinery and equipment parts and supplies wholesaling rose 1.7%. The indexes for portfolio management and transportation of passengers partial also increased. Intermediate demand by production flow. Stage 4 intermediate demand: prices for Stage 4 intermediate demand moved up 0.2% in May following 3 consecutive declines. In May, the index for total goods inputs to Stage 4 intermediate demand increased 0.5%. Conversely, prices for total services inputs decreased 0.2%. See Table D. Advances in the indexes for beef and veal, portfolio management, gasoline, machinery and equipment parts and supplies wholesaling, transportation of passengers partial, and staffing services outweighed falling prices for non-residential real estate rents, diesel fuel, and securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services. See Table 6. For the 12 months ended in May, the index for Stage 4 intermediate demand decreased 1.7%. Stage 3 intermediate demand: the index for Stage 3 intermediate demand rose 0.3% in May following 4 consecutive decreases. In May, prices for total goods inputs to Stage 3 intermediate demand moved up 1.2%. In contrast, the index for total services inputs fell 0.4%. Rising prices for gasoline, slaughter poultry, slaughter barrows and gilts, slaughter steers and heifers, machinery and equipment parts and supplies wholesaling, and beef and veal outweighed decreases in the indexes for securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services, raw milk, and diesel fuel. For the 12 months ended in May, prices for Stage 3 intermediate demand declined 8.0%. Stage 2 intermediate demand: the index for Stage 2 intermediate demand moved up 1.9% in May, the largest increase since a 2.0% rise in December 2016. In May, prices for total goods inputs to Stage 2 intermediate demand advanced 5.0%, and the index for total services inputs edged up 0.1%. Rising prices for gas fuels, crude petroleum, portfolio management, staffing services, transportation of passengers partial, and lubricating oil-based stocks outweighed decreases in the indexes for securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services, plastic resins and materials, and steel mill products. For the 12 months ended in May, prices for Stage 2 intermediate demand declined 8.3%. Stage 1 intermediate demand. The index for Stage 1 intermediate demand fell 0.6% in May, the fourth consecutive decline. Prices for total goods inputs to Stage 1 intermediate demand fell 0.7%, and the index for total services inputs decreased 0.7%. Declines in the indexes for diesel fuel, basic organic chemicals, loan services, partial, securities brokerage, dealing, investment advice, and related services, non-residential real estate rents, and fuels and lubricants retailing outweighed increases in prices for transportation of passengers, partial, gasoline, and gas fuels. For the 12 months ended in May, prices for Stage 1 intermediate demand fell 8.5%. The Producer Price Index for June 2020 is scheduled to be released on Friday, July 10, 2020 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Technical note. Brief explanation of Producer Price Indexes. The Producer Price Index (PPI) of the Bureau of Labor Statistics (BLS) is a family of indexes that measures the average change over time in prices received price changes by producers for domestically produced goods, services, and construction. PPIs measure price change from the perspective of the seller. This contrasts with other measures, such as the Consumer Price Index (CPI). CPIs measure price change from the purchaser's perspective. More than 10,000 PPIs for individual products and groups of products are released each month. PPIs are available for the products of virtually every industry in the mining and manufacturing sectors. Over time, new PPIs have been introduced for products of industries in the services and construction sectors of the U.S. economy. As of January 2018, the PPI covered 71% of services as measured by 2012 census revenue, and 31% of construction. More than 100,000 price quotations per month are organized into three sets of PPIs: 1. Final Demand Intermediate Demand (FDID) indexes, 2. Commodity indexes, and 3. Indexes for the net output of industries and their products. The FDID structure organizes products by class of buyer and degree of fabrication as well as by stage of production. The commodity structure organizes products by similarity of end use or product type. The entire output of various industries is sampled to derive price indexes for the net output of industries and their products. Final Demand Intermediate Demand Indexes. The PPI FDID structure measures price change for goods, services, and construction sold to final demand and to intermediate demand. The FDID system replaced the PPI Stage of Processing (SOP) system as PPI's primary aggregation model with the release of data for January 2014. The FDID model expands coverage beyond that of the SOP system through the addition of services, construction, exports, and government purchases. Compared with finished goods under the SOP system, the PPI for final demand goods includes nearly a 50% expansion of coverage. This increase can be traced to the addition of government purchases and exports. For overall final demand, expansion to include final demand services represents an even larger increase in coverage. In December 2017, final demand goods were about 33% of overall final demand services were roughly 65.5%, and final demand construction was about 1.5% of final demand. Within intermediate demand, coverage of services for intermediate demand resulted in about a 45% increase in coverage of the intermediate demand portion of the economy. FDID indexes are constructed from commodity-based producer output price indexes. Commodities are allocated to aggregate indexes primarily based on the type of buyer. The main source of data used to determine the type of buyer is the use of commodities by industries, before redefinition, table. From the benchmark input-output accounts of the U.S. in many cases, the same commodity is purchased by different types of buyers. As a result, commodities are often included in several FDID indexes. For example, regular gasoline is purchased for personal consumption, export, government use, and business use. The PPI program publishes only one commodity index for regular gasoline, WPU 057104, reflecting sales to all types of buyers, and this index is used in all aggregations regardless of whether the gasoline is sold for personal consumption, as an export, to government, or to businesses. Proportions based on B. Use of commodities. Data are used to allocate the correct portion of the total weight of gasoline to each use category. In cases when buyer type is an important price-determining characteristic, indexes are created based on specific buyer type. For example, within the PPI category for loan services, separate indexes for consumer loans and business loans were constructed. For more information relating to the FDID structure, see a new, experimental system of indexes from the PPI program in the February 2011 Monthly Labor Review. Final demand. The final demand portion of the FDID structure measures price change for commodities sold for personal consumption, capital investment, government, and export. The system is composed of 6 main price indexes: final demand goods, final demand trade services, final demand transportation and warehousing services, final demand services less trade, transportation, and warehousing, final demand construction, and overall final demand. The final demand goods index measures price change for both unprocessed and processed goods sold to final demand. Fresh fruits sold to consumers and computers sold for capital investment are examples of transactions included in the final demand goods price index. The final demand trade services index measures price change for the retailing and wholesaling of merchandise sold to final demand, generally without transformation. Trade indexes measure changes in margins received by wholesalers and retailers. The final demand transportation and warehousing services index tracks price change for transportation of passengers, as well as transportation of cargo sold to final demand, and also includes prices for warehousing and storage of goods sold to final demand. The final demand services less trade, transportation, and warehousing index measures price change for all services other than trade and transportation sold to final demand. Publishing, banking, lodging, and health care are examples of these services. The final demand construction index tracks price change for new construction, as well as maintenance and repair construction sold to final demand. Construction of office buildings is an example of a commodity that would be included in the final demand construction index. Lastly, the overall final demand index tracks price change for all types of commodities sold to final demand by combining the 5 final demand component indexes described above. Intermediate demand. The intermediate demand portion of the FDID system tracks price change for goods, services, and construction products sold to businesses as inputs to production, excluding capital investment. The system includes 2 parallel treatments of intermediate demand. The first treatment organizes intermediate demand commodities by type. The second organizes intermediate demand commodities into production stages, with the explicit goal of developing a forward flow model of production and price change. The intermediate demand by commodity type portion of the system organizes commodities by similarity of product. The system is composed of 6 main price indexes: unprocessed goods for intermediate demand, processed goods for intermediate demand trade services, intermediate demand transportation and warehousing services, intermediate demand services less trade, transportation, and warehousing, and intermediate demand construction. The unprocessed goods for intermediate demand price index measures price change for goods sold to businesses as inputs to production that have undergone no fabrication. Crude petroleum sold to refineries is an example of an unprocessed good sold to intermediate demand. The processed goods for intermediate demand index tracks price change for fabricated goods sold as business inputs. Examples include car parts sold to car manufacturers and gasoline sold to trucking companies. The index for trade services for intermediate demand measures price change for the services of retailing and wholesaling goods purchased by businesses as inputs to production. The intermediate demand transportation and warehousing services index measures price change for business travel, as well as transportation and warehousing of cargo sold to intermediate demand. The intermediate demand services less trade, transportation, and warehousing index measures price change for services other than trade, transportation, and warehousing sold as inputs to production. Legal and accounting services purchased by businesses are examples of intermediate demand services excluding trade, transportation, and warehousing. Finally, the construction for intermediate demand index measures price change for construction purchased by firms as inputs to production. The index for construction for intermediate demand tracks price change for maintenance and repair construction purchased by firms. The production flow treatment of intermediate demand is a stage-based system of price indexes. These indexes can be used to study price transmission across stages of production and final demand. This system is constructed in a manner that maximizes forward flow of production between stages, while minimizing back flow of production. The production flow treatment contains four main indexes: intermediate demand stage 1, intermediate demand stage 2, intermediate demand stage 3, and intermediate demand stage 4. Indexes for the four stages were developed by first assigning each industry in the economy to one of four stages of production, where industries assigned to the fourth stage primarily produce output consumed as final demand. Industries in the third stage primarily produce output consumed by stage 4 industries. Industries assigned to the second stage primarily produce output consumed by stage 3 industries, and industries assigned to the first stage produce output primarily consumed by stage 2 industries. The four indexes then track prices for the net inputs consumed by industries in each of the four stages of production. The Stage 4 Intermediate Demand Index, for example, tracks price change for inputs consumed, but not produced, by industries included in the fourth stage of production. Hence, the index tracks price change in inputs to industries that primarily produce final demand commodities. Stage 4 producers primarily produce commodities sold to final demand. Examples of heavily weighted goods producing industries in Stage 4 include the manufacture of light trucks and utility vehicles, automobiles, and pharmaceuticals. Retail trade, food service and drinking places, and hospitals are examples of heavily weighted service industries included in Stage 4. Stage 4 also includes all new construction industries. Examples of goods consumed by Stage 4 industries include motor vehicle parts, commercial electric power, plastic construction products, biological products, and beef and veal. Engineering services, machinery and equipment wholesaling, long-distance motor carrying, and legal services constitute examples of services consumed by Stage 4 industries. Examples of highly weighted goods producing industries included in Stage 3 are motor vehicle parts manufacturing, animal, except poultry, slaughtering and processing, and semiconductor manufacturing. Services industries classified in Stage 3 include wholesale trade, insurance carriers, architecture, engineering, and related services, and hotels and motels. Examples of goods consumed by Stage 3 industries include slaughter steers and heifers, industrial electric power, and hot-rolled steel bars, plates, and structural shapes. Services commonly consumed by Stage 3 industries include commissions from sales of property and casualty insurance, business loans, temporary help services, and administrative and general management consulting services. Petroleum refineries, electricity generation, transmission, and distribution, natural gas distribution, cattle ranching and farming, and plastic materials and resin manufacturing are among the goods-based industries assigned to Stage 2. Services industries that are heavily weighted in Stage 2 include management of companies and enterprises, non-depository credit intermediation, insurance agencies and brokerages, and services to buildings and dwellings. Goods commonly purchased by Stage 2 industries include crude oil, natural gas, formula feeds, and primary basic organic chemicals. Services that are heavily weighted in the intermediate demand Stage 2 index are legal services, business loans, and cellular phone and other wireless telecommunication. Goods producing industries in Stage 1 include oil and gas extraction, paper mills, and grain farming. Real estate, legal services, and advertising services are examples of highly weighted services industries included in Stage 1. Examples of goods consumed by Stage 1 industries are commercial and industrial electric power and gasoline. Services commonly consumed by Stage 1 industries include solid waste collection, chemicals and allied products wholesaling, and guestroom or unit rental. It should be noted that all inputs purchased by Stage 1 industries are by definition produced either within Stage 1 or by latter stages of processing, leaving Stage 1 less useful for price transmission analysis. For additional information on industry stage assignments, see https://www.bls.gov/p/industryflowstage.htm. Comparing the PPI with CPI. Although some data users utilize the PPI as a potential indicator of the Consumer Price Index (CPI), there are many reasons why the PPI and the CPI may diverge. The scope of the personal consumption portion of the PPI includes all marketable output sold by domestic producers for households. The scope of the CPI includes goods and services provided by business or government, where explicit user charges are paid by consumers. For example, the most heavily weighted item in the CPI, owner's equivalent rent, is excluded from the PPI. The scope of the CPI includes imports. The PPI excludes imports. The CPI only includes components of personal consumption directly paid for by the consumers, while the PPI includes components of personal consumption that may not be paid for by consumers. For example, the PPI includes medical services paid for by third parties. In contrast to CPI, PPI does not completely cover services. PPIs exclude taxes, since they do not represent producer revenue. Conversely, sales and other taxes paid by consumers are part of household expenditure and are included in the CPI. Additional technical differences between PPI and CPI also exist. For more information, see Comparing New Final Demand Producer Price Indexes with Other Government Price Indexes, Monthly Labor Review, January 2014, at https://www.bls.gov/opub/mlr/. Commodity Indexes. The commodity classification of the PPI organizes goods, services, and construction by similarity of product or end use, disregarding industry of origin. With the release of data for July 2009, PPI expanded its commodity structure to include indexes for services and construction products. Prior to this date, the PPI commodity structure only included products from goods-producing sectors. Table 9 of the PPI detailed report includes data for commodity indexes, organized in a hierarchical structure, including major groupings, subgroups, product classes, subproduct classes, and individual items. Industry Net Output Price Indexes. PPIs for the net output of industries and their products are grouped according to the North American Industry Classification System (NAICS). Prior to the release of January 2004, industry-based PPIs were published according to the Standard Industrial Classification (SIC) system. Industry price indexes are compatible with other economic time series organized by industry, such as data on employment, wages, and productivity. Table 11 of the PPI detailed report includes data for NAICS industries and industry groups 3, 4, 5, and 6-digit codes, census product classes 7 and 8-digit codes, products 9-digit codes, more detailed sub-products 11-digit codes, and, for some industries, indexes for other sources of revenue. Indexes may represent one of three kinds of product categories. Every industry has primary product indexes that show changes in prices received by establishments classified in the industry for products made primarily, but not necessarily exclusively, by that industry. The industry classification of an establishment is determined by which products make up a plurality of its total shipment value. In addition, most industries have secondary product indexes that show changes in prices received by establishments for products chiefly made in some other industry. Some industries have miscellaneous receipts indexes that track price changes for other sources of revenue received by establishments within the industry that are not derived from sales of their products, for example, resales of purchased materials, or revenues from parking lots owned by a manufacturing plant. Data collection. PPIs are constructed using selling prices reported by establishments of all sizes, selected by probability sampling, with the probability of selection proportionate to size. Individual items and transaction terms also are chosen by probability proportionate to size. BLS strongly encourages cooperating companies to supply actual transaction prices at the time of shipment to minimize the use of list prices. Prices submitted by survey respondents are effective on the Tuesday of the week containing the 13th day of the month. The survey is conducted online via the BLS Internet Data Collection Facility (IDCF). Price data are provided on a voluntary and confidential basis. Only sworn BLS employees are allowed access to individual company price reports. BLS publishes price indexes instead of actual prices. All PPIs are subject to revision 4 months after original publication to reflect the availability of late reports and corrections by respondents. BLS periodically updates the PPI sample of survey respondents to better reflect current conditions when the structure, membership, technology, or product mix of an industry shifts significantly and to spread reporting burden among smaller firms. Information on these resampling efforts are noted in the PPI news release and PPI detailed report in the months they occur. As part of an ongoing effort to expand coverage to sectors of the economy other than mining and manufacturing, an increasing number of service and construction sector industries have been introduced into the PPI. The following list of industries introduced since the mid-1990s includes the month and year in which an article describing the industry's content appeared in the PPI detailed report. Weights. Weights for most commodity groupings of the PPI, as well as weights for commodity-based aggregate indexes calculated from commodity groupings, such as FDID indexes, currently reflect 2012 values of shipments as reported in the Census of Manufacturers and other sources. From January 2012 to December 2017, PPI weights were derived from 2007 shipment values. Industry indexes now are calculated under the 2017 NAICS structure utilizing 2012 value of shipment weights and 2007 net output ratios. The periodic update of the value weights used to calculate the PPI is done to more accurately reflect changes in production and marketing patterns in the economy. Net output values of shipments are used as weights for industry indexes. Net output values refer to the value of shipments from establishments within the industry to buyers outside the industry. However, weights for commodity indexes are based on gross shipment values, including values of shipments between establishments within the same industry. As a result, broad commodity grouping indexes, such as the PPI for all commodities, which is composed of major commodity groupings 01 through 15, are affected by the multiple counting of price change at successive stages of processing, which can lead to exaggerated or misleading signals about inflation. The intermediate demand by commodity type FDID indexes partially correct for this defect, but industry indexes, final demand FDID indexes, and intermediate demand by production flow FDID indexes consistently correct for this at all levels of aggregation. Therefore, industry and FDID indexes are more appropriate than broad commodity groupings for analysis of general price trends. Price Index Reference Base. Effective with publication of January 1988 data, many important PPI series, including most commodity groups and individual items, were placed on a new reference base, 1982 = 100. From 1971 through 1987, the standard reference base for most PPI series was 1967 = 100. Except for rounding differences, the shift to the new reference base did not alter any previously published percent changes for affected PPI series. See Calculating Index Changes, below. The 1982 reference base is not used for commodity indexes with a base later than December 1981 or for industry net output indexes and their products. The FDID indexes typically have a reference base of November 2009 = 100. For further information on the underlying concepts and methodology of the Producer Price Index, see Chapter 14, Producer Prices, in the BLS Handbook of Methods. This chapter can be downloaded from the BLS website at https://www.bls.gov/opub/home/homsh14.htm. Calculating Index Changes. Each PPI measures price changes from a reference period that equals 100.0. An increase of 5.5% from the reference period in the final demand goods price index, for example, is shown as 105.5. This change also can be expressed in dollars, as follows: prices received by domestic producers of a sample of final demand goods have risen from $100 in November 2009 to $105.50. Likewise, a current index of 90.0 would indicate that prices received by producers of final demand goods are 10% lower than they were in November 2009. Movements of price indexes from one month to another are usually expressed as percent changes, rather than as changes in index points. Index point changes are affected by the level of the index in relation to its base period, whereas percent changes are not. The following example shows the computation of index point and percent changes. Index point change. Final demand goods price index, 107.5. Less previous index, 104.0. Equals index point change, 3.5. Index percent change. Index point change, 3.5. Divided by the previous index, 104.0. Equals 0.034. Result multiplied by 100. 0.034 x 100. Equals percent change, 3.4. Seasonally adjusted and unadjusted data. Because price data are used for different purposes by different groups, BLS publishes seasonally adjusted and unadjusted changes each month. Seasonally adjusted data are preferred for analyzing general price trends in the economy because these data eliminate the effect of changes that normally occur at about the same time, and in about the same magnitude, every year, such as price movements resulting from normal weather patterns, regular production and marketing cycles, model changeovers, seasonal discounts, and holidays. For these reasons, seasonally adjusted data more clearly reveal underlying trends. Unadjusted data are of primary interest to users who need information that can be related to actual dollar values of transactions. Individuals requiring this information include marketing specialists, purchasing agents, budget and cost analysts, contract specialists, and commodity traders. It is the unadjusted data that are generally cited when escalating long-term contracts such as purchasing agreements or real estate leases. For more information, see Price Adjustment Guide for Contracting Parties, on the web at https://www.bls.gov/p/escalation.htm. Seasonal adjustment is accomplished using X13 ARIMA, a software package published by the U.S. Census Bureau. Each year, the seasonal status of most commodity indexes is reevaluated to reflect more recent price behavior. Industry net output indexes are not seasonally adjusted. For time series that exhibit seasonal pricing patterns, new seasonal factors are estimated and applied to the unadjusted data from the prior 5 years. Updated seasonally adjusted indexes replace the most recent 5 years of seasonal data. Seasonal factors may be applied to series using either a direct or an aggregative method. Generally, commodity indexes are seasonally adjusted using direct seasonal adjustment, which produces a more complete elimination of seasonal movements than does the aggregative method. However, the direct seasonal adjustment process may not yield figures that possess additive consistency. Thus, a seasonally adjusted index for a broad category that is directly adjusted may not be logically consistent with all seasonally adjusted indexes for its components. Seasonal movements for FDID indexes are derived indirectly through an aggregative method that combines movements of a wide variety of subproduct class 6-digit series. Seasonally adjusted indexes can become problematic when previously stable and predictable price patterns abruptly change. If the new pattern persists, the seasonal adjustment method will eventually reflect it. If the pattern keeps shifting, however, seasonally adjusted data will become chronically troublesome. This problem occurs relatively infrequently for farm and food-related products, but has more often affected manufactured products such as automobiles and steel. Since January 1988, the PPI has used intervention analysis seasonal adjustment methods to enhance the calculation of seasonal factors. With this technique, outlier values that may distort the seasonal pattern are removed from the data prior to applying the standard seasonal factor estimation procedure. For example, a possible economic cause for large price movements for petroleum-based products might have been the Persian Gulf War. In this case, intervention techniques allowed for better estimates of seasonally adjusted data. On the whole, very few series have required intervention. Out of almost 400 seasonally adjusted series, only 42 were subject to intervention in 2018. For more information relating to seasonal adjustment methods, see Summary of changes to the PPI's seasonal adjustment methodology in the January 1995 issue of Producer Price Indexes, and PPI and CPI Seasonal Adjustment, an update in the July 2010 Monthly Labor Review. Producer Price Index data on the Internet. In 1995, the BLS began posting PPI series, news releases, and technical information to both a World Wide Web (WWW) site and a File Transfer Protocol (FTP) site. During the years following the introduction of PPI Internet services, use of these sites eclipsed more traditional methods of data dissemination, such as subscriptions to the PPI Detailed Report. There were more than 4 million instances of PPI data and tables being downloaded from the BLS website during the 12 months ended December 31, 2017. Retrieving PPI data from the PPI website. PPI data can be obtained from the www address https://www.bls.gov/p. On this page, under the tab labeled Featured PPI Databases, links provide the following methods of data retrieval. Top Picks is a form-based application for both industry data and commodity data that allows the user to quickly obtain PPI time series data by selecting the high-level aggregate and other commonly requested time series, including the All Commodities Index and the FDID indexes, for example, Final Demand. Within each list, any one, or all, of the time series shown can be selected. A user can modify the date range and output options after executing the query, using the Reformat button above the data output table. One-screen data search and multi-screen data search are form-based query applications for both industry data and commodity data designed for users unfamiliar with the PPI coding structure. These applications guide a user through the PPI classification by listing index titles and do not require knowledge of commodity or industry codes. Data retrieved are based on a query formulated by selecting data characteristics from lists provided. Two options are available to create customized tables, depending on a user's browser capability. The one-screen option is a JavaScript application that uses a single screen to guide a user through the available time series data. The second option is a multiple-screen, non-Java-based application. Both methods allow a user to browse the PPI coding structure and select multiple series. Users can modify the date range and output options after executing the query using the Reformat button above the data output table. Series Report is a form-based application that allows users to input multiple, formatted PPI time series identifiers, commodity or industry codes, as inputs in extracting data according to a specified set of date ranges and output options. This application provides the most efficient path for users who are familiar with the format of PPI time series identifiers. There are 5 alphabetic prefixes used to create unique PPI time series identifiers: WP, WD, PC, PD, and ND. Each provides the user access to a different PPI database. Adding either a U not seasonally adjusted or an S seasonally adjusted to the end of these prefixes further specifies the type of data needed. Examples: for commodity and FDID indexes, series identifiers combine a WPU prefix not seasonally adjusted or a WPS prefix seasonally adjusted with a commodity code. Commodity code provides data for WPS 141101. Passenger cars, seasonally adjusted. WPU 141101. Passenger cars, not seasonally adjusted. WPUFD4. Final demand, not seasonally adjusted. WPSID 63. Services for intermediate demand, seasonally adjusted. For discontinued commodity indexes, series identifiers combine a WDU prefix not seasonally adjusted or a WDS prefix seasonally adjusted with a commodity code. Commodity code provides data for WDS019. Other farm products, seasonally adjusted. WDU0635. Preparations, ethical prescription, not seasonally adjusted. WDUSI 13801.1 Stainless steel mill products, not seasonally adjusted. Current price indexes grouped by industry according to NAICS have series identifiers that begin with the prefix PCU. After the prefix, there are 12 digits. The 6-digit industry code is listed twice, followed by up to 7 alphanumeric characters identifying product detail. Dashes are used as placeholders for higher-level industry group codes. Industry product code, current NAICS series. Provides data for PCU 325, 325. Chemical manufacturing. PCU 336,110,336,110. Automobile and light-duty motor vehicle manufacturing. PCU 621,111,621,111,411. Offices of physicians, 1 and 2 physician practices and single specialty group practices, general, family practice. Discontinued industry product codes based on SIC combine a PDU prefix and hash between the 4th and 5th characters of the product code. Series identifiers for the discontinued dataset use underscores as placeholders to complete a reference to an SIC industry group code of fewer than 4 digits. All PPI industry-based indexes organized by SIC were discontinued with the introduction of NAICS in 2004. Industry product code, discontinued SIC series. Provides data for PDU 28__hash. Chemicals and allied products. PDU 331_hash. Blast furnaces, steel works, and rolling and finishing mills. PDU 3711 number 111. Passenger cars. Price indexes for discontinued series grouped by industry according to NAICS have identifiers that begin with the prefix NDU. After the prefix, there are 12 numeric digits. The 6-digit industry code is listed twice, and up to 7 additional alphanumeric characters that identify product detail. Dashes are used as placeholders for higher-level group codes. Industry product code, discontinued NAICS series provides data for NDU 212,231,212,231. Lead and zinc ore mining. NDU 2,122,312,122,312. Lead, zinc concentrates. NDU 212,231,212,231,214. Lead concentrates. Text files are best suited for users requiring access to either a large volume of time series data or other PPI-related documentation, such as seasonal factor tables and relative importance tables. The text files can be accessed at https://download.bls.gov/ or directly from links on the Ppi Databases page or the Ppi homepage. Data and documentation available for download include the following: directory, industry data. Pub time, series per percent. Industry data, discontinued. NAICS basis. Pub time, series, ND. SIC basis, pub time, series, PD. Commodity data. INCL. FDID, pub time, series, WP. Commodity data, discontinued. Pub time, series, WD. Special requests. Pub, special, requests per pixel per inch. Additional information. The PPI homepage https://www.bls.gov/p closing parenthesis contains additional information regarding PPI data and methodology. The top section of the homepage provides PPI news releases, both current and archived, as well as general PPI information. The PPI tables section found beneath the statistics section provides relative importance and seasonal factor tables. The remaining sections offer special notices and publications pertaining to PPI methodology and applications. For questions or comments regarding PPI data classification, methodology, or data availability on the Internet, call or email the section of Index Analysis and Public Information at 202-691-7705 or ppi-info@bls.gov.